Hey guys, new video here, talking about my final thoughts on Blight League overall, all the things that came out of Blight League, and this is a one take, it's not very organized, and this would be kind of off the cuff, right, like kind of hot take. So I played Blight League for 2 months, 2 months out of the 3, and I played a variety of builds in there. I played all the blighted maps, I did all the anointment testing with the rings, I did pretty much everything there was to offer. In the Blight League, I tried out actually all the items. Well, actually I didn't try out like double enchanted helmet, but that's harder to do for other reasons I'll explain. But very excited for the future of that. And overall, I give Blight League, if we're gonna like tier out the leagues, right? They are like at the top would be, I guess, like Breach when it came out. For me, like Synthesis and Legion are also like way up there, right, in terms of rewards and fun. Played Synthesis for 3 months. I played Legion for 3 months. I played, well, Breach was like back when I didn't like stream as much, so I played that for I think it was like 2 months. So I'd say like these days, I usually play a league until the end, unless there's just like something that's not there, right? And obviously, Blight League was missing something, so let's go there. I guess if I had a table of contents, we could talk about like I guess like the leveling process first. So I remember I started Blight League and I died on my very first Blight encounter in the Cavern of Anger before Merveil, right? I was like, oh shit, this is hard. All right, nice. Challenging content. And like if I had completed these, like everyone in chat was like, oh, I got a tabula from this, I got these uniques from this. It's amazing for leveling, and I like that, right? I like when a league mechanic is not like skipped in the leveling process, and it can be very exciting, right? Most of the time it is now anyways, just for the speed of getting to maps. But I thought that was kind of cool. And one thing I noticed was like the number of pure monsters in it, right? I love monster pack leagues. Obviously there's no beyond this league, but still monster pack leagues are really good because PoE at its core is about killing like lots of monsters, right? This isn't like some MMO where we're gonna like tab target a monster and kill it like in 15 to 20 seconds. So I was like, wow, that's a lot of monsters per zone that I can go in. And not only was it a lot of monsters, the monsters were grouped up, right? They had to travel on the lanes. They spawned from the same point. So, obviously, what this means for mapping, right? If everything spawns in the same spot, beyond was going to be crazy if you could get beyond. And roll on the map. It wasn't on the map device. So it was like very high expectations, right? Getting into it, it's important to know that there was a patch, I think 4 or 5 days in. And what used to happen in Blight in the first half of the first week was if you tagged a Blight in a map, there would be, I would say, 1 rare monster every couple seconds per portal. Okay, so what that meant was that, let's say like you go over here, you kill some monster, you go to another portal, you kill some monsters. Sometimes you would see like 4 or 5 volatiles start to follow you. You'd see like 10 lightning mirages underneath your feet. And that's really crazy too, because in the patch notes, it was really great. They made a big change where rare monsters now have like kind of an aura around them, where like the pack around the rare monster also has increased quantity and rarity, right? So innate magic find in the game for the rare monsters. So because a rare monster spawning every couple seconds from each portal, it was like, wow, the loot explosion must be truly insane. And so you would kill all these monsters, and there'd be so many rares. You could get so many stacks. Like eventually, if you had a headhunter, super fun, right? But then they nerfed it, right? And like later on, they did a dev manifesto where it was because of the the necromancers and all the effects and all like the auras, like, and all the like proxy shields and stuff, that they had to reduce the monster count. So I think that's one thing that led to the Blight League not being as well received, as not being as fun later on, because the monster spawn was just like too slow, and you eventually had these builds that could just like sit on the pump, whether it be in a map or whether it be in a true blighted map. The stuff you're seeing on screen right now is blighted maps, by the way. And this is like the watered down version of it, right? Still kind of hectic depending on your build, but a shadow of its former self. And so I think that was like one big mistake. I think that there should have been Now, I'm not a game developer, right? I don't know what goes behind the code. If they say they need to change it for serviceability, then that's just too bad. That's what we have to deal with. But reducing the monster count, it feels like it was like less than half the monsters. And not only that, if you played in the first 4 days, you know that the blues and the rares were spawning at a rate which like really excited you. And now they just weren't. They're like in a map, if you look in the top left corner of my screen here, right, this is just old footage, the like little orange icon is the stolen headhunter buff icon, right? And there's be another one for inspired learning if I was using those. And you can just like see how many there are in this blighted map. Remember, if you're doing a map, a tier 16 will always have at least 5. It'll always have at least 5 nodes, right? 5 circles, right? The circles on the bottom in the middle of the screen, you can see there. And it can go up to 8, and you can also get up to 10 if you have 2 boss encounters on a boss encounter on 2 of those 8 nodes. Okay, now this is there's always in a blighted map, there's always I think 20. Okay, and then obviously like there's bosses and stuff like that, but you can see that in the top left you barely get any stacks. So the rare monster rate was nerfed by like maybe like 90% or something. It's really crazy what they did there, and I was kind of unhappy with that. I don't know if many people noticed. I mean, people probably didn't like play enough to really notice this, all right? Especially if they were taking it slow in the leveling or skipping it in the first couple days. But that was like kind of a huge blow to it, right? And another thing was, because it was so crazy, like initially, I had some huge hopes for group play, because in PoE there's like really no group play. You have your people that push for the first 100, or you have like groups that trade really heavily with like a dedicated trader and like a few people, so that they can get all their juicy items and make a lot of wealth and stuff like that as like a team goal. But for the most part, PoE is a group-based game, right? And we saw in the ExileCon how they said they don't really develop things for group play. Like there'll never be like a raid in PoE or anything like that. And you know, it's true, because like, why would you want a group play when the particles from another player will either stutter you or like reduce your FPS significantly? You know, the magic find to an extent, unless you're truly group playing, is kind of has DR, right? Like sharing the loot with someone else and having to wait for someone else. There's a lot of reasons why you can't group play, and there's why there's that lack of community. I think a lack of sense of community driven goals, I guess, in PoE. I'll make another video about like ideas for like community events and community driven content, which would maybe make people like maybe not necessarily group play, but play on in the same way, or play for to get the same goal, right? And so I had high hopes for group play, because you know, early blighted maps, it was so hectic. If you got like 4 people in there, you actually each had to like build towers and each like do damage, and like you had to have like boss killers maybe. It was really ridiculous, and it gave hope that like if the rewards are good, right, and if it's really fun, which it was, then I would group play all day. It was like the one league where I was like, man, I want to play with my friends. Like I've been streaming for a while. I have enough friends in the game where like if I wanted to, I get a full party going and crush this content, and everyone would be willing to do that, because it's at the current time, it is fun enough, right? And it turned out not to be the case, right? After the nerfs. So the possibility of group play and the excitement for playing with your friends after the first patch was kind of eliminated, and I thought that was kind of sad, but it's fine, right? Like that's like the initial thoughts there. Okay, let's talk about like lore and characters added, right? We all know like in each expansion there's a chance to get like some lovable character like Einhar, like you're captured, stupid beast, ha ha. Okay, that's great, right? And then you have like Zana, fan favorite there, right? She's just like so core to the story that you can't really imagine a game without Zana and her map device. Other characters are kind of cute as well, you know. So you have these characters, and they introduce Cassie, and as I know like people are gonna laugh. They're gonna be like L Omega Lol RE, right? Lore, who cares about that? But it does bring a sense of like, man, like you feel like attached to these characters sometimes, right? And so they brought in Cassie, and Cassie's like a nun. She's like a nun character that builds the pumps. You don't really know why she's doing it. She's not she hasn't been like heralded before, like, you know how like Parandis comes into the game with, and then later on there's more Parandis characters, and there's Parandis lore and Parandis family lore and all that, so it's like fleshed out, right? And like some of like the Templar characters are kind of fleshed out as well, but Cassie just comes out of nowhere. So, and she's got like to me she's got kind of a weird voice, because she has a old lady voice, right? But then she has like a little girl voice as well, depending on what she's saying and what she's like screaming and stuff like that, and what you're talking to in a dialogue option. So I thought that was kind of weird. And it's like she doesn't like, she feels cool. She's a cool character. She's like a sci-fi nun that builds towers. That's kind of cool, but you don't really ever know why the blight is actually there. When you talk to her, the dialogue options go towards like maybe there's a reason for the blight or finding the source of the blight. But you never really find that. You don't know what the hell's going on, right? This is like just building towers. When you poke the needle into the blight spore, then monsters come out, and it's like, all right, yeah, sure, fine. I don't need a reason, right? If like the rewards are good, the monsters are fun to kill, that's like fine. But it was just like didn't make any sense really. And if you think about like breach lords and abyss and what else, like delve things, I think if you think about like incursion and stuff like that, right? There's some things that are tied together because like the beyond and the abyss dudes drop each other's diff cards, I think. And there's like the bosses between that. It's fleshed out. Like the breach is like another dimension. There's like bosses behind it, but there's no real bosses in Blight. And for a lot of people, you want to see what that end game boss is, right? Because you want the loot to come from like, you kill this boss, like for example a cortex, and you can get a bottled faith, or like maybe get a nebulous with exploding affix on it. But there was no real bosses in this league. The bosses were just like it's like you just like take a monster and then you drag the corner to like, instead of cropping it, you just like expand it to make it bigger and have like more HP, right? So like it was like there's no real bosses, right? And then the loot itself came from like the loot explosion, which is a little bit underwhelming, right? So the lore and the characters weren't really there, and I'm not, that's like, this like might be the most minimal part about a league, right? Like the lore. But when everything else is missing, there's not even like that fallback of like, oh, okay, I kind of know what's going on, I know the purpose of this and stuff like that. So that was a little bit strange as well. In terms of items, we go over all the items. So I guess my favorite item going forward would be the helmet, right? I wasn't able to get a double enchanted helmet, and the helmet is cool. It's like it has like a prefix, and it's like the file, right? It's like the fire, ice, lightning, right? It's kind of cool. The stats don't really matter. The cool part about it is that you can double enchant this, and I think this is so important because as they come out with more and more enchants and new skills and supports and things like this, and then in 2.0 when you have multiple 6 links, the ability to stack 2 enchants, I think is going to be like on a chase tier level, right? Like a headhunter. And the reason I say this is because let's take something that we know right now is strong. Melee has been good, has been bad in the past, has been good in the past. It's going to be good again one day. With like all these new skills being added, it's just inevitable. Okay, and I don't mean like true melee, like dual strike or something. I mean like, melee, right? Ice crash, cyclone, things like that. And you take a skill like berserk, and the berserk enchant, one of them increases the effect. So instead of having like more attack speed, more damage, more move speed, that gets multiplied, right, by a percent. I think it's like 30%. And then there's a berserk enchant that makes it last way longer. If you are a berserker and you have that enchant, which I tried out, I couldn't play without it with Cyclone that one league, in Legion I think it was. Then your berserk will now last forever. So it'll last forever, and it'll give you more of everything, more speed, okay, across the board. So I think a combination like this, that's incredibly hard to get, because you need to enchant them twice in a row, because you can't just like enchant it later and choose which one to take off. The enchant pulls off the oldest enchant. So obviously you can do anointments as well, but for the enchants are much more powerful. So I think this will be like, in the future, it will be the chase tier item in terms of speed and power, because just that synergy alone that we have now, there's going to be more synergies once PoE 2 comes out with like multiple 6 things. Okay, that is an insane helmet that I really hope gets added into the game somehow, whether with Time Lost Relic, maybe a Jack in the Box, maybe someone creates a divination card, maybe Blight goes core in some small way. Okay, that's a cool helmet. Boots, not that great, because we thought that they might be a 50% more multiplier, but they're not. They're just 50% across, just on the character. It's kind of like a lore weeb. So the boots were all right. You can get an anointment on it. Before you get like your really nice Moosey boots, they might be a stopgap right between that, because you can anoint them, so that gives you a little bit extra juice on that. So that's kind of cool. Gloves are really nice because I'll make a video one day about like what I think are like cool items in PoE. They don't have to be tied to like power, but they just have to have some cool effect. And the gloves were really nice because they gave you like free MTX. The spores would pop up quite often, give you different auras. Very powerful for like minions. Very powerful for just like mapping in general, right? Because they would pop up on rare kill everywhere. There's no cooldown, so you kill a group of rares, you have 3 different auras, and that was pretty nice. And they can be anointable, right? They can be anointable, and then you can corrupt them for like a curse on hit. That's like crazy. So I think the gloves do have some use as an attack build. You know, it's probably not as good as like Toomey Fist or something like that, but still interesting item. And I love how they brought about like a theme, and like they try to make the uniques actually unique. What else do we have? We have a chest of Spore Guard, which it gives like kind of like a Profane Bloom, but there's a cooldown on some of the explosions, so you can't really reliably do it as well as the Occultist, or with like the Gloom Shrine, or with the Exploding Weapon, things like that. So it is unreliable, but it's really cool. And I like how they made the Spore Guard kind of match the Bane Lich MTX, where like the Bane Lich cloak flows down into the ground, into the roots that the Spore Guard gives you, right? And so like, it's a pretty good item, I guess, right? It's got some nice stats, and you know, if you're fighting monsters that are in one place, like the Blight, I guess it's pretty good because the pops will be where the monsters are spawning. Overall, talking about anointments are insane. Anointments are something I really hope they keep in the game. Everyone hopes that they keep anointments in the game, because it's like power creep, but in a really cool way. Whereas it's not just like some straight up flat more multiplier, right? Or getting like 6 support gems when you previously could have only gotten 5 or something, right? It's actually like, imagine your character's level 100 or like level 99, and you sometimes play around with your tree to get that extra notable. Well, this is like basically levels you past 100, because some of these nodes you would have to take like 4 or 5 points stretch to go get, or you know how sometimes you would like take bad points to get to a really good notable. That eliminates it, right? And I think for the most part the costs were very fair. And if you think about some of the things that they added with the anointment system, right? Chris has often said that it's like criminal not to use previous assets that they've created for these leaks. They want everything to really go core. And he said it was criminal that it wasn't, that synthesis content and assets weren't in the game. And I agree, right? They brought back some of the synthesis guys in the blighted portals. But what's cool about this is if you take things like the Vengeant Cascade or something, or the thing that gives you a smaller ancestral call, these are essentially anointments that are extra skilled gems or support gems, right? This is the exact same thing. So they've created like extra support gems or skill gems in the anointment system, which if they don't put that back in there, then that's kind of sad. They can be very powerful, have a lot of uses, right? And I can see in the future where, like, you know, some of these things could they could make the game look pretty funny, right, with what's coming out later. So I think that should definitely be included in the game in some way. The oils themselves, the rarity, I think was totally fair, right? Like for example, if you take splinters of the Legion splinters, you take the Breach splinters, right? We end up hiding some of the lower ones sometimes. Well, maybe not the Legion ones, but the Breach ones, you start hiding the bad ones. And so it's not bad. It's not bad that, like, you know, the sepia, the amber, the clear oils are like, you know, you don't really pick those up, but like the tiers of like the good ones, those were amazing. Like the ring enchants and the rarity of those, it was like kind of exciting every time you got even a black oil or an opa oil. Right, so I think oils could have some place in there. If they want an anointment system that's maybe more streamlined, like bestiary, like maybe if you find Cassie at a 1% chance per map, she gives you a random enchant, a random anoint on something, right? They could put her in the temple, where you could have, like, if you had a tier 3, you get a more rare anointments, things like that. There's so many ways that they can actually implement her without being like annoying, like it is kind of right now, right? With waiting for the blight encounters and having to do the blight encounters. So that's one thing they do. Ring enchants, tower defense. I think everyone likes tower defense as a standalone game. This league was not really tower defense though, because the towers didn't really matter. Like sometimes it was actually easier to do the blighted maps if you were a projectile build without the towers. It was actually easier because you could see more. Some of them were eating projectiles. So I think in a real tower defense league, the ring anointments would have been like really pog, because the ring anointments actually changed the way the tower's fired. You know, you could see the differences that you would get, and the power difference from like a 1 meter to a 3 meter. Like it would just chunk a T15 boss in a blight map for like 80% of their HP, right? It was pretty huge. And I like how there was some cheesing with like it was snapshotted. So because you're in the blight map for 5 minutes anyways, there's nowhere for you to go. You could like swap in a ring that had some empowering towers, so your towers at double damage, swap out the rings again into your meteor tower, and then you could like play around and have like min-maxed tower strats. But as it turned out, the strategy didn't matter. Because if you needed the towers, like let's say you were some melee build, you were complete garbage at doing these blight maps anyways, no matter what tower you had. So it didn't really matter, and that made me kind of sad as well. Okay, so moving on with that, in terms of like the patches that came out after, I think the patches that came out after were a little bit disappointing as well, because we know from, you know, like Synthesis and Harbinger, the two big ones, that up to like the 3-ish week mark, maybe 4-week mark, they do make some significant improvements to the league based on feedback and stuff like that. And the patches, the good one was like the blighted maps became playable, because they did increase the number of chests that spawn at the end, right? And then because more chests spawn, you have more chance to use like the good oils. And that was a good change. Without that change, I think I would have quit playing a lot less, because like the blighted maps were one of my favorite things. But it just turned out that most of the patches were bug fixes, and there were bug fixes to like very specific things that didn't impact gameplay for most people, right? So that was also kind of sad. I expected more out of the patches, but they were working on 3.9 and like the 2.0 stuff. So I mean, we can't, you know, I'll give them a pass on that one, right? It's just, yeah, patches were a little lackluster this league. But in terms of the blighted maps, okay, blighted maps are amazing, because once you got the hang of it and you started using like teals, crimsons, and even some of the higher tier oils, open the chest was amazing. Like getting the amount of stacked dicks, or the just like the mystery in any of this, it's in anything league, right? Like Headhunter could have dropped, you could have dropped so many cool things in these chests, right? Like the gem chest, you could have gotten 21 23 like the delve only gems basically, right? So it made these gems a lot more accessible, made like gambling for the div cards a lot more accessible. You can straight up drop like the good div cards itself out of the chest. But I think without the blighted maps, well, I already said this, but without the blighted maps buffs, it was like pretty bad. And you know that most people in a league play for like a week. Like if you look at Steam charts and just like Twitch numbers overall, after that first week, it's like a nosedive, right, to like the bottom. And so if the rewards and like the fun isn't there right away, you don't like adjust that fast enough, everyone's just gonna leave and nobody comes back, right? Nobody comes, because like nobody's gonna read your patch notes after they quit the game. Like they say like, oh, patch, like 3-week patch for bug fixes comes out, no one's gonna read the patch notes and see that you increase the tendril rewards, right? So that was it was a little bit slow on that change right there. So that felt kind of bad. But overall, blighted maps are very fun if you have a build can do it. The discrepancy between, and the reason why people complain about forced meta, is that I think it's forced meta is like just what they have time to work on. They can't fix like everything or change everything in the game in one league. It's just not possible with like PoE2 and all these leagues. They have to create like 13-week cycles and stuff. So like when they focus on one thing to improve, like summoners this league, melee last league, that's just what they're able to do in the time. So it's not like forced meta, but I understand how people are like frustrated with that, because in this league specifically, if you were a summoner or a range character, you could actually sit on the pump and not do anything and just reap your rewards with effortlessly. Whereas I did play melee builds this league, and I was running around like it required full concentration, and still sometimes your pump was in danger, right? It is not fun at all to play a true melee build this league in blighted content, which is the challenge league. And so if you chose to play a melee build or a pseudo melee build, you just kind of got screwed over. It just wasn't fun. So there was that discrepancy there where it felt more like a forced meta in terms of like the things that they buffed, they wanted you to play to check out the new stuff, was just significantly better at doing the blighted content. Oops, feels bad. So in the future, I would hope that the split between like what you choose to play. Let me fast forward into a little bit of content here. I would really hope that what you choose to play would not impact your end game farming like so much, right? And I think in like the Metamorph League, it looks pretty good because it's like things seem to spawn in the maps, right? So it's like pretty good. Okay, going into like the after playing for a long time, it's the thing you notice is like what else is there to farm, right? Like the chase items are the same in the game, I guess, like the headhunter, the double corrupt, the anointments. The most expensive anointment was 3 exalts, so it's not really chase. There's not really anything to work for. You could straight up buy the anoint, the soul of steel anoint, that was the most expensive if you wanted to. So there was like no reason to really keep doing blighted stuff, right? Or like you get the oils, and yeah, you would sell the oil. So the oils was like, so dropping like an opalescent oil was the same as dropping like 20 or 30 C. So it's like nothing you could do with it. I think a huge thing would have been to do oils are usable on maps, or they're not usable on maps, but a regular map that drops tier 1 through tier 16 could just be anointed with up to 3 random oils, right? Because you know you're gonna get 1 Cassie encounter, and all the oils work on the Cassie encounter, whether it's like lucky boxes, more pack size, more XP, it works, right? So why not just let us use the normal oils? Especially the clear through amber oils were completely useless, right? You go to Pewee Trade and buy like 100 of them in like half a second for like 2C. So why not allow us to use those on the map, right? On a regular map. That would have extended the lifetime of the league, because now like every Cassie is much more juicy. You know that if you use teal oils on them, then you know that the armor and the weapon chests, which are like, there's a lot of them, would be more likely to be div card chests or unique chests or the other fun chests. That's something they could have done, but maybe that was just too much work. Let's talk about XP. If you are not farming for the items, let's say you're farming for a stronger character, the experience was so bad. It was like the experience in a blighted map was maybe like, after a 5-minute blighted map, it was maybe like a fifth or like a quarter of a regular T16 map. Like, I don't know why they made it so bad XP. Maybe they were scared of or like the backlash of like Legion, like running in a circle, leveling, power leveling, pure Chayula, Breachstone, things like this. Maybe they were scared of that. But the XP was so bad that you couldn't do this for XP. So that's one part of the game, I guess, removed from the Challenge League, right? So, okay, there's no bosses. That end game is done. Map farming, yeah, there's map farming, but you can't really speed farm because it takes so long, and so so it's like kind of weird there. And then also now, let's say you're farming for characters, right? You want level 100 for some reason, or you want just a stronger character to level up. You're not going to get that in the blighted content. So the XP was really bad for the time it took, and a lot of this comes down to time and no double fast forward button. There is a single fast forward button, but even after hitting that, the mobs take a while to spawn, and you don't really know when it's going to end. Like, it felt kind of random. Like some blighted encounters I felt like ended like at a fair time. Some felt like they took forever. And if you didn't get like the stragglers as well, because sometimes there's like this thing where like if a chest spawned and there was a synthesis mobs behind it, like the little metallic wheel things, they wouldn't progress past the chest. They would just sit there. You wouldn't know about it. So it took way too long, and time is kind of a commodity in this game, right? If whether you have like 30 minutes to play or like me 14 hours to play a day, you want to feel like your time is valued. And it's kind of the fault of we've been spoiled by leagues where it's too fast, but I think it's easy to say now that the Blight League was too slow, and people don't want to wait around knowing that what they're farming is not like really worth it to them, right? There's not gonna be a boss that spawns. There's not gonna be guaranteed like one of the chests I want to spawn, right? It's like it's kind of silly. Okay, talking about the rewards a little bit more, I want to recap my tests that were done. I did 40 T15 blighted maps under the following criteria. I did 40 maps with triple golden oil. I did 40 maps with triple silver oil. I did 40 maps with 2 golden, 1 silver. I did 40 maps with 2 silver, 1 golden. Okay, so I did the entire range. That's 160 maps. And what I found across all of them, right? I have a YouTube video explaining like just the goldens, I think, is that you would, if you sold your stacked dicks, once again, this is like not fun, right? Having to sell your stacked dicks at like 4 or 5 C each to like make a profit, because like that's like some of the reason I'm doing the blighted maps is to get those items, right? That are really fun to use. If you were to sell the things that would actually sell, and you know, you take the currencies and you take the stacked dicks as 4 or 5 C, which they were, you'd make around 7 to 10 exalts, depending, right? Depending on the rolls of the unique set you would drop. For example, like Taste of Hate, you know, max rolls is much more expensive than a Taste of Hate min roll, and even Wise Oak and things like that. So on average, if you sold all your stacked dicks, you make between 7 and 10 exalts. It takes forever to run these maps. Between the running them, it's not just 5 minutes. You can't just say 40 times 5, that's 200 minutes. No, the looting afterwards is very long, and the stash cleaning afterwards is very long as well. So for the time, making 7 to 10 exalts, when you could just map for like 4 hours, make like, if you hardcore like map T16s, like juice them up in 8 hours, you get like 30, 40 exalts, right? I tested that as well with Excellence. So I know what I'm comparing it to. And the time and what you would get out of it is definitely not worth it. It is fun. I think it's worth it in the fun aspect to me, but it is just like when you have these oils that on paper seems so good, right? Like re-rolling a chest to make it lucky, which doesn't actually re-roll the contents. It re-rolls the chest into a higher tier. So like an armor chest would be more likely to become a div card chest, and you know, a weapon chest would be more likely to become like, you know, gem cutter's chest or like a unique chest, things like that, or an oil chest if you're lucky. So for all this and all the, you have to craft it, you have to use the oils on it. And it ended up also, the loot explosion is so minuscule after the nerfs that if you ran a map white, a blighted map white versus a blighted map 20%, you know, 6 mods, 30 pack size, there would be no difference. There would actually be no difference. And that's so what is, like, you know, what is that end game after all these previous leagues if there's just, you're just not getting more for investing more or pushing your character, right? So overall, no matter what you used, any combination of gold and silvers, you make between 7 and 10 exalts over that long ass time, and that feels really bad. So and then the same thing in, like, if you're doing the maps as well, like the maps are fine, you can get blighted maps. Blighted maps were still selling pretty high throughout the league, but it didn't make sense to me that if you invested in a PoE character or you had a better character than someone else, when you go into a map, that difference, like, you hit the button, you're there for a minute at least, right? On Cassie, it doesn't matter what build you have, you're sitting there for a minute at least. If you can do the map, if you can do the encounter, you do it, right? If you can't, well, that's just too bad. And so there's really no difference, right, what you play. So that's kind of sad. Whereas you know, I guess, like, to some extent, breach stones, you know, the better your build is, then you're not gonna, like, it's not gonna open faster, but you have way less chance of failing, and it makes the boss at the end a lot easier, right? And you don't need to carry. So that's, like, kind of a huge difference. Same with the 5-way encounters, right? 5-ways was a little bit too skewed, but taking a lesson from 5-ways, they were scared of the glacier farming, because the glacier farming was so much better than T16 farming on a currency per hour basis. So what they did this league, without really telling people, right? I guess that they don't owe it to us to tell us, but in white maps and yellow maps, the Cassie encounter is actually not worth doing. It is a complete waste of time, because a white map will spawn usually with 3 nodes. Yellow maps will spawn usually with 4 nodes minimum, I think. And the red maps, T16s especially, will be, not only will it be a minimum of 5 nodes, it's usually between 5 and 8. And then, well, I guess between 5 and 10. And then the blighted maps that drop from a T16 cannot be below tier 13. So there's some hidden rule there that isn't explained. So because most people, I'm guessing, aren't in the T16 maps, they're doing these, like, they're not only doing content, they don't know that the content gets better. Like, it took me and like other, like, people who chain farm maps a long time to figure this out. A long time in the terms of a PoE league, that is. So it was just like you didn't know that the low tier farming on across the board for not only the Blight but the Legion and the Breaches was so nerfed that it wasn't worth playing, right? So you couldn't make an informed decision on what Atlas strategy you wanted to pursue. So that also kind of hurt it. And I guess overall, I just want to say that Blight League for me, it was like pretty darn fun for the 2 months. But after 2 months, I was kind of like what am I doing, right? Like there's like not really anything new to do. There's like new skills, that's cool, but yeah, that's my overall thoughts on Blight League, right? I give it's an okay league, but I really hope they take some lessons from Blight League, which it seems like they are, and they put it into the future leagues. I'm very excited for 3.9, very excited for PoE 2, and now I'm playing hardcore solo self-found and stuff like that. So yeah, now that's like breathe a little bit of new life into the game, trying to get to maps. Maybe level 100 on hardcore solo stuff. We'll see. Probably not. But anyways, this is a big rant video, but that's the video. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any questions, you can ask me on twitch.tv/cutedog_. I stream every day on Twitch. Okay, bye everyone. Thank you for watching. Bye.